All right, we're back, guys. I changed into not a tank top because it's not that kind of live stream. Okay, yes, it is starting now. All right, I'm just doing a quick live stream because there is an explosive diarrhea outbreak going on in the US right now. Yeah, it's restarting. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. We're back. So, explosive diarrhea outbreak going on in the US right now. Let me see if I can share. We have a map of where it is. It's mostly kind of in the eastern Great Lakes. So, we should talk about what Cyclospora is, uh, make some guesses about where it came from because we have no idea right now. Um, where is the map? There it is. That's the current map. The good people of the Indiana Star saw fit to give us a map shaded in brown. So thank you for that. So it's concentrated in the Eastern Great Lakes. The first cases were actually in New York, and Michigan's been getting a lot of the limelight for it lately. But we're also seeing a lot in Ohio. We're getting a little bit here in North Carolina, so that's exciting. Um, Washington State just reported their first case today. Um, it might not actually be related to this outbreak that's happening out east because you can just get sporadic cases of Cyclospora even without an outbreak. So we should, I think we can't share this map and have the camera going for the live stream at the same time, which is frustrating. Here, let me try and, oh, we can. Okay. All right, so let's talk about what Cyclospora is. We have some concerns that it could have a big death toll. So actually, surprisingly, no. It's just explosive diarrhea, which is we have a lot of foodborne illnesses like the E. coli 0157H7. That one gives you food poisoning, bloody diarrhea, and it nukes your kidneys. Cyclospora doesn't do that. It's just explosive diarrhea. Folks who are immunocompromised, if you're really old, if you're really young, you can have some more problems with that just from severe dehydration. Your immune system isn't as good. But hey, it could spread to Canada, if you guys still import our stuff. We had somebody say it, at least it's not in Canada. Um, but yeah, for the most part, Cyclospora, while it does give you an impressive round of diarrhea, that's kind of it. It doesn't do further internal organ damage, unlike some other foodborne illnesses. So that's nice. Um, let's talk about what Cyclospora is. So we're used to bacterial illnesses. We've got viruses. Cyclospora is a protozoan, so a little bit different. It's just a single-celled organism, and the only place it comes from is in human sewage. I feel like a lot of the news is leaving that part out. There, E. coli you can get from cattle manure, basically any kind of poop. Cyclospora only comes from untreated human sewage. I feel like a lot of the news is leaving that part out, which clearly raises a lot of questions. Why are so many people getting this all of a sudden? The US has had kind of growing amounts of Cyclospora over the last few years. We kind of almost just have a Cyclospora season in summer now. I have seen people chalk this up to climate change. I will say, climate change is real. It does not cause people to shit where they shouldn't shit. Okay. That's it does not cause sewage treatment problems. It does not cause massive hygiene problems on farms or in food safety in food facilities. Also, if it were caused by warm weather, it would be happening mostly in Florida, not up by the Great Lakes. You know what I mean? So, yeah, as someone who works in agriculture, we have to work around climate change. It is real. It is a problem. And that doesn't mean we can just point to everything that's a new problem and say that's caused by climate change. Sometimes people just make stupid decisions, and that's what causes our problems. And Cyclospora, I think, feels to me like a pretty safe one to put into that category. We have questions about DOJ cutting food inspectors. They cut a lot of things. USDA food inspectors weren't going out to farms really in the first place. If there's a change in how much law enforcement there is, that's going to be more at the state level. So you can have state level officials, because of the current political environment, being even more afraid to do enforcement on farms than usual. The thing that's really weird is because US food safety laws for farms and especially produce can be quite lax. Um, grocery stores and food retailers like major restaurant chains set up an alternative system to protect themselves. That's third party food safety audits. So instead of a government inspection, you'd have someone, it's kind of like organic certification, right? You call up a company and you say, hey, I need this inspection. Can you come run it for me? So we have that for food safety as well. Those kinds of inspections should keep this kind of thing down. Farms are required to have porta potties on site, because we used to have people who worked on farms, farm workers, they used to just have to kind of go poop in a ditch on the side of the field. That is kind of the traditional way that sanitation on farms was handled. It didn't work very well. You got a lot of foodborne illness outbreaks. And so a big push that state laws to some extent, and also especially the food safety audit system, set out to fix was we're not going to be pooping on the edge of the fields anymore. We have to have bathrooms or at least a porta potty that is cleaned out once a week, right? Or every other week, depending on how much is going on at the farm. That's kind of what it takes at the farm level to have a big cyclospora outbreak is you have people pooping on the edge of the field. You have workers who aren't able to wash their hands. And I want to be clear, this is not because farm workers are gross. This is because farm owners are not taking care of sanitation. Nobody wants to poop in a ditch on the edge of the field because after the first day, it's already full of everybody else's poop. You know what I mean? This is like, if this is happening at the farm level, that is a failure of sanitation on the farm. So we can, I don't know, just, as a small farmer, don't do that. Don't poop at the edge of the field. Just poop at the edge of the field. We thought we fixed this. If that's what's happening. Yes, we have the person in the chat commenting, and if I remember my undergrad human parasitology course correctly, the explosive part is not to be underestimated. Among the more explosive of explosive diarrheas. Yeah. So that helps it spread, It's one thing to poop on the edge of the field. It's another to poop on the edge of the field with explosive diarrhea. Travels. So that's part of why these diseases do that to you. That's something living in your guts that's trying to spread. And, if they can get themselves a little jetpack, then that's easier. So that's fun. Let's see. So that's Cyclospora. Okay. The only place it comes from is human sewage. The news is not really covering that part. And it almost kind of feels like, if you remember this story about cholera and how this early epidemiologist named John Snow had to break the handle off of a pump to get people to stop getting water out of a well that was causing cholera. Part of that, it was because people didn't want to admit that the water was making them sick. That was just too gross. The only way that could be happening was if poop was seeping into the water, right? Seeping into their well water. People really liked that one pump because they felt like the water was really good. It was tasty. It was good quality. And nobody who liked that pump wanted to hear there was poop seeping into it. It was just too gross, and they didn't want to think about it. So, so he tried for a long time to just tell people, stop drinking out of that well. It's not good. You got to stop pumping your water there. And nobody listened because that was just too gross to contemplate. They're like, that guy has to be crazy. There's no way that's what's going on. And so finally he just got fed up and broke the handle off the pump, and the outbreak stopped like that. So when I look at the news coverage, and again, the only place you can get Cyclospora is human sewage. It feels like that should be like part of the news coverage, and nobody in the news is really talking about it. If they mention it at all in an article, it's like a little footnote. There is no way for this to happen without big lapses of sanitation somewhere. There should not be raw sewage happening anywhere near food. Shouldn't have to say that out loud. And yet here we are. So, yeah, hang on a second. We're just catching up on a couple messages. So I've had a lot of people asking, what is this coming from? And the answer is we don't know. Cyclospora is really hard to trace for a few reasons. You have to, it's hard to do genetic testing on because you have to, like, things like E. coli and Salmonella, we have rapid test kits. You can just take a sample, get it on there, and get your answer very quickly. Cyclospora, we have to do it the old-fashioned way. Like the tests to get the DNA out of that stuff and then run it, it's just a lot longer process. And the other thing is, between you getting Cyclospora and having symptoms, it's a 1 to 2 week incubation period. So part of a food safety, part of the public health investigation, we covered this earlier. We had somebody who said migrants who poop in the field while picking fruit and vegetables for long hours. This is not because fruit pickers want to do that. It's because the farm owners aren't installing bathrooms or porta potties. This conversation really quickly turns to, ew, immigrants are gross. Everybody's poop is gross. This is an issue of the farm owners not having bathrooms. Let me be really clear about that. As someone who's been a farm worker, everyone poops. It's not the migrants' fault. This is the farm owners not doing their responsibility to run a clean farm. If there's not a bathroom, what are you going to do? You know? Let's see. Where were we? Yeah, where is this coming from? So Cyclospora is really difficult to trace because it's hard to do the test. We don't have like rapid test kits like we do with Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria. And also, it takes 1 to 2 weeks for you to get sick. Usually when someone gets sick and we're seeing an outbreak, we'll ask them, what did you eat yesterday over the last week? People have a hard time remembering what they ate yesterday. Like that's the information you have to start tracing an outbreak. Imagine when it's 1 to 2 weeks. Nobody remembers. And so, is it possible farm owners remove port? Well, no, because you don't have to put the porta potty right on the road where people driving by can see it. You usually don't. Usually they remove porta potties because they're cheap. And it's kind of if you have a large field and you have a crew, you kind of have to do like different parts of the field on different days, and the porta potty has to be right there because if it's a 10-minute walk away, no one's going to use it. So you have to have the porta potty, you have to be moving it around day by day, and that's just too much of a pain in the butt for some people. And so if they feel like for some reason there's not going to be a lot of regulatory enforcement, if no one's really expecting them to live up to basic food safety practices, they'll just kind of stop doing it. Yeah, somebody mentioned like that can happen when floods overwhelm sewage plants, uncontrolled sewage release. It's not that often that you have sewage plants of that scale right next to farms. Like that's another thing to look at, but you don't typically have those next to farms. Yeah, generally not. And when that happens, when you have floodwaters that are contaminated hitting farms, you're supposed to throw that stuff away and you get crop insurance to cover that. So I wouldn't say that would be my first guess. Is it possible they're removing porta potties for a good reason? No, because if it results in people pooping in the field, there's no good reason for that. Let's see. Anyway, so people had questions about where it's coming from. We don't actually have data. So everything I'm about to say here is purely speculation. This is based on vibes, understanding the food industry, what I know about it, and what we can probably guess. Most produce in the United States comes from California. If it were coming from California, you'd expect to see the most cases in California and the West and Southwest. We're seeing the opposite right now. There's no way to tell if this is coming from one farm or food handling facility or a bunch of them. There's no way to know that, but it does seem to be concentrated in the Great Lakes, like the Eastern Great Lakes. This outbreak started in New York. That's where the first cases were reported, like the first big cluster of cases. And now it's thickest on the ground in Michigan and Ohio. So whatever's going on, this really seems to match like regional produce distribution. Like there's a produce distributor or a farm or several farms kind of in that area. Upstate New York, could be Pennsylvania, probably not Pennsylvania though, they haven't had a ton of cases. Upstate New York, Michigan, Ohio, somewhere in that area. And like there's produce farms out there, and they'll distribute produce kind of on a regional basis. It's not making it very far west, it's not making it very far south. That would be my guess. Again, it's hard to tell if it's one farm having a ton of cases or if it's just kind of a few different farms having Cyclospora at the same time. We don't have the information to know that yet. Is there a reason why there are so many states with no cases next to states with high cases? Yes, that's probably just reflecting produce distribution. That can also kind of reflect if a state just doesn't have enough funding for its public department. If a state's public health department is not well funded, they just can't do a lot of work. They don't have enough people to do something. And so it can take extra time for cases to work through and get reported. So that could be part of it. I would say that's possible for like South Carolina, West Virginia. That's definitely not what's happening with Minnesota. Minnesota has the best public health department in the United States. It's very common when we have a foodborne illness outbreak in the US. It is very common for those to go on for weeks or months and nobody can figure out where it is. until Minnesota has their first 2 or 3 cases. And they figure it out within a week because Minnesota just funds their health department properly. They have enough people to do the job quickly. So it's really interesting that we're not having any cases in Minnesota yet. That would definitely not be because their health department's not working. That tells me they're actually not having cases there. And that again kind of suggests that it's coming from something further east and it's just a regional produce distribution thing. If it's if it's regional produce distribution, that also can help you kind of narrow in on what food is coming from. Cyclospora usually comes from fruits and vegetables because meat, we usually cook that. Heat does kill this thing. So it's almost always raw fruits and vegetables this comes from, usually berries, herbs, green onions, sometimes leafy greens. I know bag salad is the first thing that comes to everybody's mind, but that usually comes from almost entirely California, a little bit of Arizona. So again, if that's what's happening, you would expect to see the most cases in California, a little bit in Arizona, out west and southwest. That's not the pattern we're seeing. We're seeing the opposite. So it's bag salad is always a good first guess, but I would say this distribution kind of suggests that's not what it is. Again, as we learn more, I could be wrong. I always got to be open to like actual facts once we have them. Does it survive flash freezing? I don't know, man. Your Googling is as good as mine on that one. Let's see. So just my gut level vibes guess is it's coming from produce that is probably being grown somewhere in the eastern Great Lakes in one of those states along the lake, and is being moved around by a regional produce distributor. It's also possible it's coming from a bunch of super local farms, but I don't think so. If it like, for example, most of the berries in that area are on like hyper local U-pick farms. So for this kind of pattern to be happening from hyper local U-pick farms, you'd have to have dozens or hundreds of U-pick farms simultaneously tell everybody to start pooping in the ditches. And I feel like someone would notice. Like the families who go pick berries are like, ew, that's gross. I feel like word would have gotten out about that. So we're probably looking at just kind of a larger wholesale oriented farm or farms doing most of it. You can also just have like odd little cases of cyclospora every once in a while. When there's like a little bit of, somebody falls in a ditch, drinks a little bit of water, boom, they get cyclospora. That kind of random thing can happen. It's when you get clusters of dozens or hundreds of cases that you start going, ooh, it's something in the food system. If it were coming from the water, you'd probably see a lot more people with it. It would be a lot more widespread. I think Milwaukee had a big cryptosporidium outbreak because their water system got contaminated. So everybody was drinking, I think, cryptosporidium. If that's what were happening, I think we would be seeing a lot more cases. This is like really spread across a wide area. This really just looks more like regional produce of some kind. If it is regional produce, that can also help us narrow down what might be causing it because there's only so many things that are in season in this area right now. Again, probably not leafy greens. I wouldn't say probably berries just because of like the scale and where those are usually grown. Where this is on the map could fit apples, except it's the wrong season for apples. Those aren't until fall. So I gotta lean like green onions, some kind of herbs. It is very difficult for farmers in the US to compete with herbs coming out of Mexico and California unless you're in kind of the far northeastern quadrant of the country and you're so far away from Mexico and California that you have a much fresher product with a longer shelf life, and so you can compete. Herbs and green onions do kind of have a history with cryptosporidium, so it's just they're a little bit more likely to be the culprit. Oh no, someone just ate a whole bunch of raw green onions. Well, if you get the wild shits in 1 to 2 weeks, you'll know what happened. You heard it here first. But seriously, check with your doctor. They can tell you if it's actually crypto. Sorry, not crypto. Cyclospora. Let's see. When does human manure have a positive role in agriculture? When it has been sterilized by hot composting. Cancer patient in Chicago. Just saying, don't need the shit right now. Like, none of us need the shit right now. But yeah, especially folks who are immunocompromised. Keep an eye out. I will say, cooking does kill it. There is a reason that historically a lot of civilizations have cooked all their produce, right? It's stuff like this. If you don't have really tight sanitation, cyclospora gets out, and then it's on your veggies. And one really good way to eliminate that is just cook everything. So if you're worried, if you're immunocompromised, if you're in the areas that are affected, that is a thing you can do, is just cook your produce. Um, Extra washing at home, I don't think fermenting helps because it's a spore that is, um, double check me on that, but I think Cyclospora, you get it as a spore, and fermenting is not going to kill that. Cooking will, though. Washing is kind of hit or miss, because you can physically rinse off the spores, but also a lot of leafy greens and vegetables have kind of a waxy, little bit of sticky texture. So like by the time you scrub it enough to get the spores off of that, like you've also destroyed the produce. So again, there's a reason that cooking produce historically is very popular. Um, uh, High levels of rain overflowing sewers. I mean, that's a thing that happens every year. That's and that would also be like a one-time event. You're not going to have like this outbreak's been going on for weeks. It's been going on since June. So I don't think it would come from a one-time flooding event. This is something kind of systemic and consistent going on in the food system. Crazy heat? No, if it were heat, it would be starting in the south. Like that's the thing. We kind of talked about this at the start. I've kind of seen some people say it must be climate change, expanding the range of where pathogens can live. As someone who works in agriculture, climate change is real. It's bringing about some real problems. However, problems caused by humans being ineffective at things are still out there. We should not just jump to climate change as the explanation for everything, especially when it doesn't fit the pattern of a climate change problem. If this were caused by high heat, it would be striking the South first, and it would be striking the South heavily every single year. If it's centered around the Great Lakes, it's probably not caused by heat. And if you live up there, this is your hottest part of the year, so it's really easy to think, yes, the heat brought this. But there's a lot of places that are already way hotter most of the time. Use us as a check. Use us as comparison. We're here for you. If the Cyclospora didn't start down here, it probably didn't come from the heat. So, okay, somebody asked, could it be from peaches? I was wondering that too, because it does kind of fit like an orchard distribution. We have orchards in upstate New York. There's a lot in Michigan. I don't know about Ohio, but Ohio would get produce from those. But I don't think so. I don't think there's actually a lot of peaches in the orchards in upstate New York. They are very kind of all in on apples for the most part. And also, tree fruit don't tend to get Cyclospora because it comes from poop, which is usually dirty water on the ground, and they're a tree that's up here. It can happen, but not usually. Yeah, usually it's like leafy greens and herbs that are like on the ground. And leafy greens and herbs have a lot of surface area per weight, and so that's a lot of surface area for spores and bacteria and stuff to stick on. That's why leafy greens and herbs tend to be like the number one source of outbreaks among vegetables. Which governmental agency is in charge of figuring this out? Great question. So CDC usually collects information from state public health departments. So like tracking cases within the states, that's the state public health departments. And then they report, here are all our cases for this week to the CDC. And the CDC mostly, if I recall correctly, just collects data. And then finding out, like if we're talking about which food facility or farm did this come from, and okay, guys, we have to go on pause, that's usually the FDA. If it's produce lines, which it looks to be the case here. If it was a food facility or farm that's only selling within the state, then that's the state public health department. But yeah, so CDC just like collects data and puts it up there so everybody can see it and help. So it does that. So CDC doesn't find the source, but it collects the data so other people who are finding the source can use that information. And then I think FDA either tracks it down, or once it's found, FDA is in charge of getting it to stop. So has that been helpful? Traditional values, yeah. No cholera yet, so that's nice. So that's kind of the overview. People have had a lot of questions about, so we're having kind of more of a Cyclospora season. I'm not convinced that's a totally new thing. If you read old diaries from back in the day, fun story, I did grow up Mormon, so we did a lot of genealogy. You get to know your ancestors pretty well. They talked a lot about something called summer complaint. It used to be completely normal for small children to just get the shits every summer. They called it summer complaint because saying poop was impolite. But that used to be a completely normal thing to have happen. That was just part of the rhythm of life. And it is why so many children died under the age of 5. Um, that just used to be the baseline. That used to be normal. We invented sanitation and sewers and clean water so that we didn't have to keep living like that. And we've had a couple generations of people who have had it too good for too long and don't realize what public health has given them. So, um, yeah, I mean, people want to say like we're having increasing cases. I think it might just be we're going back to baseline a little bit. I would hope that once people have experienced what it's like to just have diarrhea surges in summer and have that be normal, maybe we're more willing to put some more effort into public health. Someone asked, "What can we eat?" So many issues. Look, if you cook it, everything's fine. Because we don't know where this is coming from, we cannot say just avoid this and you'll be fine. Like we don't have enough information to say that right now. What we do know is if you are immunocompromised, if you have just immune system health issues, if you have small children, if you are elderly or have elderly people in your household, probably a good time to cook everything, which is fun, especially if you're in that area that is affected. Canned food is fine. Trying to see, got questions and stuff. Deep dirt plowed up, probably not. Cyclospora, there's only one place that Cyclospora comes from, that is the human intestinal tract. So deep dirt is not a human intestinal tract, so it's probably not that. Let's see. Oh yeah, organic is not going to do anything to stop diseases like this. Organic and food safety are two fully different things, and actually sometimes they're a little bit in conflict. I say that as a former food safety auditor who is currently running an organic farm. You have to sometimes you have to work a little bit to make those work together. Let's see, the outbreaks around bodies of water. Yeah, this outbreak is just kind of, it seems to be based in the Eastern Great Lakes. It started in New York. That's where the first cases were. And now we're having the most cases in Ohio and Michigan. None in Minnesota, which is interesting. In Minnesota is good at catching this stuff. So if it were happening in Minnesota, we would know. Producers oxidize. Can they add other steps? I'm not sure what this is asking. I think this is asking about sanitation in packing houses where they're handling produce. Usually there's a step where you wash the produce. That can be to get dirt and sticks and bugs off of it. If the produce is dirty, like if one of the pieces of lettuce has a little piece of bird poop on it, once you put it in a bathtub with all the other produce, then all the produce just has a thin layer of bird poop on it. Unless you add things like you add sanitizers to the water, so that can be things like peracetic acid, that can be things like sodium hypochlorite. It's the same in the tap system to keep stuff from growing in the pipes. So that will keep it from spreading around in the wash water in a packing house. That is standard. Certainly, if you're doing a food safety audit, that is required. It's possible that we have a packing house or a couple packing houses that just got a little sloppy with it. That can happen. I would hope that they have noticed they have a problem and are fixing that. That being said, Cyclospora has spores, and so the sanitizers might not work on it. For that, the only thing you can really do is just not have human sewage in the parts of your farm that grow food. The packing house can kind of rinse it off, but we talked earlier about how rinsing is just like not that effective because a lot of your plant surfaces, like lettuce and things, it's like a little bit of a waxy, a little bit sticky surface. By the time you scrub it enough to get it off, you've destroyed the produce. Yes, you can use sewage as fertilizer, but you have to clean it up first, usually through heating. We talk about compost. Compost is like, it's not just any old decay. Compost is when you stir it and get a lot of oxygen in there to feed your microbes, and they eat so much and make so much metabolic heat. Like when you work out, we make heat in our bodies. So we're trying to get the microbes to process the food fast enough that they make a lot of heat. and they kind of cook the compost for you. That's what compost is. If it doesn't reach 130 degrees, I think for 5 days, 15 days, 3 days, I would have to look at the guidelines. But you need to get it to 130 degrees, 130 some degrees for multiple days. Only then is it compost. Only then is it clean. If you just leave it in a pile to kind of slowly ferment coldly, that's not compost. That's just sparkling decomposition. So, let's see. Oh, we have a note. Hydrogen peroxide and prussic acid can be sporicidal. I would have to look at the labels and all that stuff just to double check. Hydroponic lettuce can be safer. I will say be cautious, because if you have staff in there, if you have workers and you are not giving them proper bathroom facilities, so they don't have anywhere to poop properly and they don't have the ability to wash their hands, you're still gonna have poopy hands. So even in a hydroponic facility, you can have problems with that if you're not doing your hygiene. So I did work with a number of hydroponic lettuce farms that they had this attitude of like, we're clean, we don't have to clean. And I'm like, you still have to wash your hands. Oh my God. So does warm soapy water kill it? Not really. I think we've kind of covered what we know, guys. We wish we knew more and we don't. So I could speculate all day about like, oh, this, I would suspect that it's probably some kind of herbs, or green onions being grown somewhere in that region of the country, distributed at a regional level. But that is purely a guess based off of vibes. As we learn more, I'll probably turn out to be wrong. So don't take me on gospel for that. If you Cyclospora, we've had over 2,000 cases and nobody's died yet. It's just explosive diarrhea. It's not. You have a lot of foodborne illnesses that come with extra stuff, like the E. coli 0157H7 will give you bloody diarrhea and nuke your kidneys. We don't have to worry about that with Cyclospora. It's just explosive diarrhea, which is still pretty bad. So if you have health problems, immunocompromised, small children, if you have elderly folks in your house or you are elderly, cook your produce. Cooking fixes it. Washing is kind of like, it can help, but it's not 100%, because for that to work, you'd have to scrub the produce, like kind of to the point where you just demolish it. So, let's see. And that's it. That's all there is to know. That's all the real information we have right now. I wish we knew more. That would be nice. Let's see. We've had about half an hour of this. Yes, if you cook it, if you bake it, it's gonna. If you cook it, it's gonna be fine. Peeling maybe, sure. The thing is, like, the peeler is going to get cyclospora on it, and then you're putting it back on the produce. You know what I mean? If it's got a bunch of cyclospora, peeling can help, but it might not get it to 100%. So if you need the food to if you have a health situation where you just cannot get cyclospora, I wouldn't count on peeling. I would cook, personally. Vinegar, I would not recommend vinegar for dealing with Cyclospora. That's not going to kill spores. All right, that ought to do it. All right. Well, thanks for coming, you guys. Nope, that's not how the appendix works. Sorry. If that's what the appendix did for us, no one would ever get diarrhea ever. That's a beautiful thought, though. I love that for you. All right. Everybody have a good night. Well, putting the peeler and bleach afterwards, you'd have to put it in between every slice, and it still might not fully get it off there. If you need to not get cyclospora, just cook it. Just cook it. We have a simple solution for this. There is a reason that historically most people cook their vegetables. Eating raw produce is eating a lot of our produce raw is a new thing we invented after we invented sewers and clean water and toilets. So have a good night, everybody. It's been lovely. This is what Friday nights were made for. Welcome to Friday Nights with the Delilah of explosive diarrhea. Everybody have a good night. Happy Friday.